On today's show, the Houston Rockets struggling against the Milwaukee Bucks on the second night of a back-to-back in Milwaukee, had no answer for a majority of the game against Giannis and Tate. No Bruno Fernando in this game for the Rockets, sitting out due to a left knee injury, and yet still no Alperen Sengun in the starting lineup. Instead, the Rockets opting to start Usman Garuba. Was that the right move? We're going to break down that decision-making process for the Rockets. We'll also talk about the backcourt struggles from this game. Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, how they looked against the Milwaukee Bucks defense. All of that and more coming up right here at Locked On Rockets.
This is Mission Control, Houston.
Ignition sequence start.
The Houston Rockets select Jalen Green and Jabari Smith Jr.
T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal.
Every time I step on that floor, I'm coming.
You're getting somebody who's going to come in with a chip on their shoulder, somebody who's going to come in and compete from day one.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. As always, I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, native Houstonian, a credentialed media member. I'm also the host of Locked On NBA Mondays, host of the State of the Rockets podcast, as well as Rockets Watch. Be sure to follow along on Twitter at JT Gatlin, and the show, of course, at Locked On Rockets. We are free and available everywhere you get your podcasts, including YouTube. Just go to YouTube, search Locked On Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Today's question of the day: was it the right move to start Usman Garuba in the absence of Bruno Fernando instead of starting Alperen Sengun? Let me know in the YouTube comments. I do read each and every one of those every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's prizepicks.com, promo code LOCKEDON. A lot to kind of unpack from this Rockets-Bucks game. And look, second night of a back-to-back, against a really good Milwaukee Bucks team. This was the third home opener that the Rockets played in a row, because they played the home opener in Atlanta, then they played their home opener in Houston, then they played the home opener in Milwaukee. There's a lot of extra juice, a lot of extra energy in the arena when you have these home opener type environments. Bucks wanted to put on a really good show, and man, did they put on a good show. Giannis Antetokounmpo going off to the tune of 44 points, 12 boards, and 3 assists, 17 of 21 from the floor. The Rockets really, they almost had zero answer. They basically didn't have an answer for Giannis like 85% of the time that he was on the court. There were some promising possessions where they were able to manufacture some actual good defensive stops against Giannis, but then the Bucks defense came in on the other end and slowed down the Rockets considerably. I think the biggest thing from this game was the shocking revelation, because I had Alperen Sengun penciled in as the starting center. It made a lot of sense, right? Okay, Bruno Fernando is going to be out due to the left knee issue. Why wouldn't Alp start at center? And there we are 30 minutes before tip-off, and we received the notification, all right, they're starting Usman Garuba at the 5. And I think this says a couple things here. One, I think the main takeaway needs to be that and we'll talk about Usman Garuba's actual play, because Uzi played a pretty fantastic game, all things considered, being the Rockets' third-string center and being tasked with starting the game and dealing with the likes of Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Bucks front line. I thought Uzi did a pretty solid job overall. But I think what this says is that the Rockets are incredibly committed to the idea of Alperen Sengun coming off the bench. They're committed to that being his role. And I think one of the reasons that Alp has started the season so well and has looked as good as he has through these first 3 games is because they are committed to him in this role, and he's able to get the touches and get the looks that he needs to be successful. He wouldn't otherwise be getting a lot of the same reps, a lot of the same looks, a lot of the same touches if he were in the starting lineup, because the starting center of whoever the starting center is for this Rockets team has a very specific niche role of setting screens, rolling, and sometimes not even rolling, just really setting screens, kind of moving the basketball around a little bit. And Alp can do those things, but those aren't that's not the best part of his game, right? The best part of his game is his ability to score the basketball on the low block, his ability to score at a really, really high level in the post against other bigs, to draw fouls, to create mismatches that way, to draw in a defense and kick it out to open shooters, to leverage his, insane court vision, playmaking, whatever, into plays for other guys. And he does that, again, by being a threat with the basketball in his hands. It's not to say that he can't impact the game in other ways, but right now, that is when he is at his best. And for the Rockets to have him at his best, it makes sense to bring him off the bench, at least for now, right? And again, maybe that's something that we see change as the season progresses. But right now, I very much agree that having him come off the bench is one of the reasons that he has looked so good and for certain stretches looked kind of dominant, in certain matchups throughout these first 3 games of the season. So with that being said, it was a very curious decision for them to commit to Alperen Sengun staying in that 6-man role. I kind of respect the decision, and I like that this Rockets organization is trying to just stick to its guns on this and see how it goes for a little while. And even without their starting center in Bruno, they were like, you know what? Throw Uzi in there. The other takeaway from it is that maybe this is some insight into how Steven Silas is actually going to operate with that trio of centers that he has at his disposal, to where, given a situational matchup, given a specific team, whatever, there might be a night where we see Usman Garuba get the nod instead of Bruno Fernando because he's a better matchup, or because his impact defensively, his versatility on that side of the basketball is more important than the little bit of added size and the vertical spacing threat that Bruno brings offensively. Who knows, right? Steven Silas said that he was going to be very situational about how he played his 3 centers this season. And so maybe this is the first in, a series of decisions by the front office, not by the front office, but by the coaching staff, to have a specific center in given a specific matchup. As far as Usman Garuba's play, though, Uzi had a fantastic game. We can run through his stat line really quick. Usman Garuba, starting in place of Bruno Fernando, finished the game with 6 points, 8 boards, 2 assists, 4 steals. Wasn't credited with any blocks, but did a fantastic job of, I can't say, again, the Bucks kind of steamrolled the Rockets, so it's hard to say he did a fantastic job, but situationally, there were moments where he stonewalled Giannis Antetokounmpo, where he put his hand straight up, stayed vertical, made life difficult. There were moments where the Rockets actually did have some good defensive possessions against Giannis, where they sent a second man, and as soon as Giannis turned his back to the top of the key, they sent a quick double team, and Jalen Green or KPJ or somebody would come run over and disrupt the play and force the ball out of his hands, force a turnover, that kind of thing. So the Rockets overall did a okay job, in small stretches of this game, trying to slow down Giannis. The problem is for the majority of the game, again, like 80-85% of the game, Giannis got whatever he wanted against this Rockets defense. But I do think that the signs were kind of encouraging from Usman Garuba, a guy who was buried in the depth chart kind of as like the 3rd tertiary center on this Rockets roster, for him to get the call to be the starter in this game, because the Rockets are seemingly committed to the idea of Alperen Sengun being the 6th man for this team. For him to be able to step into that starting lineup. And at one point in this game, Usman Garuba started making things happen. He was hustling. He was getting stops. He was creating on the other end for the Rockets. He got a putback. He does all the little hustle things that really can turn the tide of a game. And obviously in this one, it didn't, turn the tide too much in favor of the Rockets, but it was good to see him kind of bringing some life to a team that very much looked like they were stuck in the mud. Looked like they were kind of, the Rockets looked like they were a team that had just played a hard-fought game the night before against a very talented Memphis Grizzlies team. And then they were up against an even more talented Milwaukee Bucks team with arguably, if not the best player in the NBA, in Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I do kind of chalk this up to more or less a schedule loss. And I do think that through 3 games of the season so far, we've seen the Rockets play 2 really, really good games, obviously with some mistakes here and there against the Hawks and the Grizzlies. And then we saw them play a bad game against the Bucks. This was a bad loss. There wasn't a whole ton to be excited about, optimistic about. There were some individual moments that were good, and there's some individual things that I want to highlight, both good and bad, throughout the rest of the show. But this was kind of one of those scheduled losses, and it is frustrating because we saw them play really competitive games out of the gate in the first 2, and then you go up against the buzzsaw that is Milwaukee Bucks, and you get absolutely shredded to pieces. So from that standpoint, it is a little bit frustrating. But I do think Garuba was the silver lining in this game, that his play is really encouraging, and I do think he has a spot somewhere for this Rockets team because his talents are undeniable. He just makes things happen. He is a versatile defender. He is a smart defender. And then offensively, his passing is so underrated at this point. Like, we saw it very much on display throughout Eurobasket. We saw it on display, in every single Eurobasket game that he played all the way to the finals and becoming a champion for Spain. His passing is a really important part of what he can do offensively, to where he can set a screen, he can catch the ball on the short roll or in the paint, and he can make the kick out pass to the right man. And he did that a handful of times in this game for the Rockets against the Bucks. He only walked away with 2 assists because there were some shooting struggles going on for the Rockets in this game, especially inside the arc. The Rockets could not get anything going inside the three-point line. But we're going to continue breaking down this game. We're going to talk about the Rockets' backcourt up next. Kevin Porter Jr., Jalen Green, their struggles against this Milwaukee Bucks defense, and just kind of general thoughts on how they've looked to start the season. We're going to get there after a quick message from my friends over at Prize Picks. Look, given how hot Jalen Green has started this season, I think next game I'm going to take JG to score more than 24.5 points. I think I'll have, we'll say, Jabari Smith Jr. to have more than 7.5 rebounds. What about Kevin Porter Jr.? He's been dishing the ball out at a pretty decent clip, but I'm going to take KPJ less than 7.5 assists. And why don't we say, you know what, we'll do a second one in there for Jabari Smith Jr. We'll say Jabari Smith Jr. more than 3.5 three-pointers made, because I think he's going to break out of his shooting slump sooner rather than later. Look, what is Prize Picks, right? Basically, you pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times back on your money on any single entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. Prize Picks offers projections for any sport that you watch. This includes NBA, NFL, MLB, NHL. I can't even say it right. There's so many acronyms. Every single major sport, Prize Picks has you covered. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy and simple. They are safe and offer very, very fast withdrawals. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That means if you deposit $100, Prize Picks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code LOCKEDON at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And continuing on here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's talk a little bit about the Rockets backcourt here against the Milwaukee Bucks, both of whom struggling quite a bit in this game. And it's tough because the Rockets as a team actually didn't struggle from beyond the three-point line. They shot 43.2%, 16 of 37. That's actually some solid numbers from beyond the three-point line for the Rockets. But they could not get anything going inside the arc. They couldn't get anything going whatsoever. They were a 20 of 56 inside the arc. Yeah, that's not going to cut it against this Bucks team. That's less than 40%. It was bad against the Bucks. Jalen Green finished the game 22 points, 6 of 19 shooting, was 4 of 7 from beyond the three-point line, was 6 of 6 at the charity stripe, had 4 boards, had 2 assists, had a steal, couple turnovers. And then Kevin Porter Jr., the other part of the Rockets backcourt, 18 points, 5 of 15 shooting, 2 of 4 from the three-point line, 6 of 7 at the free throw stripe, 5 boards, 7 assists, 2 steals, couple turnovers. You look at the box score and you think, okay, well, they didn't have terrible games. They shot the ball well from long distance. They struggled on the interior. Let's start with Jalen Green here. Jalen Green didn't hit a single one of his mid-range jumpers in this game. And I want to double check that I actually have that right. Yeah. He attempted, I'm going to count this as that's 1, 2, 3. We'll count that as 4, 5. So Jalen Green had 5 middies that he attempted in this game. Didn't hit a single one. Shot decent from beyond the arc. And then was 2 of 6 at the rim is what we'll say. So as far as his combined shooting totals, the way that the Bucks defend things, right, is they concede the three-pointer. The Bucks are fine with teams shooting the three against them because they pack the paint. They use their size. They use all the size they have in their front court with Giannis, with Brook Lopez, all those guys. And they pack the paint. They make shots incredibly difficult at the rim. And they're also willing to concede that mid-range area. And so the Rockets actually got a decent, healthy number of looks from the mid-range that would have been like acceptable shots. They just weren't converting on any of them. I don't know if it was dead legs from the night before against the Grizzlies or just some of them were probably some ill-advised shot attempts here and there, some bad mid-range shots that were more so kind of forced by the Bucks defense than being good shots taken within the flow of the Rockets offense. But as far as Jalen Green is concerned in this game, it definitely felt like one of those games where he just couldn't find the rhythm inside the arc. And we've seen a few of these games from Jalen, right? Where he gets it going and he's like unstoppable at the rim, but then the shot isn't falling from the perimeter. And so then the defense starts to sag off of him as the game goes along and things get harder and harder, and it's hard for him to deliver. And then inverse, right? Sometimes he's got the outside shot going and then he steps inside the 3-point line and nothing is falling for him. In this one specifically, he struggled at the rim. The size of the Milwaukee Bucks really deterred a lot of drives in this game. He did have a sequence where it did feel like he was absolutely starting to catch fire, where he drilled a couple threes in quick succession. He had Jrue Holiday, where he got Jrue Holiday on a screen, and then as Holiday was fighting over the screen, he danced on him. I mean, he completely shook Jrue Holiday off of him, one of the best defenders in the association, and completely shook Jrue Holiday off him, stepped back onto the left wing and drained a three-pointer. And the Rockets were down like 20 when it happened, so it's kind of tough to like take a lot of enjoyment out of it, but it was cool to see Jalen Green have that like in his bag, right, to shake one of the best defenders in the NBA and get to his spot on the floor. It's just unfortunate he couldn't have done it more so in the context of a competitive game rather than the game where the Rockets largely trailed by like 20 or so, at least double digits for the majority of this game. I mean, they started out in a really rough way, 13-zip, before they were actually able to get any points on the board. So a rough overall night for Jalen Green inside the arc, really struggling against the Bucks defensive scheme. And then Kevin Porter Jr. KPJ, similar frustrations from KPJ when you look at his shot profile, where he took a majority of his shots, 2 of 4 from behind the 3-point line. You like that. But then you go see all the shots that he took, and KPJ actually basically took all his shots in the paint. Like, he's actually done a pretty decent job in this game, I should say, of forcing his way into the Bucks defense, right? Getting into the teeth of the defense. But his decision-making was all over the place in this one. Just, he would get into the paint, and he would start to elevate like he wanted to shoot, and then change his mind last second because the Bucks have 7-foot-tall Brook Lopez there, and 6'11" Giannis is right there, and then he's got the Bucks perimeter defender, closing in from behind him, is right on his hip, like all this stuff. So KPJ's decision making in this game was driving me insane, honestly, because it really felt like he would get into the paint, elevate with no idea whether he was going to shoot the ball, whether he was going to pass it, whether he was trying to draw the foul, whatever. And he had multiple possessions where, pardon me, I got the sniffles. I'm dealing with some congestion here. But it felt like he was dealing with, multiple possessions where he would get into the paint and had no idea what he was going to do with the ball. And it led to some really ugly offense for the Rockets, like really just disjointed, couldn't get any flow going. The handful of times that he like elevated with nowhere to go and then he would like kick the ball back out to the perimeter, the ball like made it back out, but it wasn't a good pass. It wasn't a pass that was going to lead to like a quality 3-point shot or anything. It was one of those where it's like the ball barely gets out to where then the Rockets have a little bit of time to try and reset and salvage the possession. So overall, I was really disappointed by some of the decision-making, I guess, from KPJ, the lack of, confidence in deciding, hey, the Bucks are defending me this way, which means I'm going to get to my shots here on the floor, or I'm going to get to this spot on the floor and force them to commit to me and then open something else up for one of my teammates. It felt like there was just a lot of shaky decision-making going on over the course of this game. But I do think that when we look at Jalen Green and Kevin Porter Jr., one of the important arguments to understand is I think Kevin Porter Jr. faces a lot more criticism at times than Jalen Green, because Jalen Green's entire job is to go out there and get buckets. He's the 2 guard of the team. He's not the point guard. His entire job, it's in his title, right? Shooting guard. His job is to go out there and shoot and to try and get buckets. And so when Jalen does that, if he just doesn't miss shots, sometimes we chalk it up to, Jalen just had a bad night. He missed some shots. We'll get him next time, champ, that kind of thing. Whereas with KPJ, I think we should start kind of viewing KPJ in the same lens. Look, I know he's the point guard of the team. I know there's the little PG right next to his, right next to him on the box score sheet, all that. And he is in charge of getting the Rockets settled, getting them into their offensive sets, setting up his teammates, all of that. But who he is as a player is very similar to the type of player Jalen Green is, to where he does rely on his ability to score the basketball, his ability to get buckets, to unlock the rest of his game. So as far as the struggles, the frustrations of the backcourt in this one, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say to sit here and be like, okay, well, Jalen Green struggled because of the Bucks defense. Oh, but but KPJ had a terrible disaster game because he wasn't finding guys and this, that, and the other thing. I think they both just struggled because the Bucks are a really good defensive team, and the defensive scheme really bothered the Rockets, and they got to certain spots on the floor that against other teams they might have found some success in. KPJ was, doing a really good job of getting into that painted area against the Hawks and hitting some of those little shots, little floater, little push shot, whatever. But against the Bucks, it was just a lot more difficult because they have all this length. They've got better perimeter defenders, and it caused him to start second guessing himself over the course of the game to where he didn't look comfortable when he was taking those shots. It very much looked like he was pressing at times throughout the game. So I do think that maybe some of the criticism for KPJ is still deserved. Like, there's still moments where both of them, Jalen and KPJ, are missing very simple, easy reads, finding guys on the perimeter, kicking it out to the open man once the defense starts to collapse, little things like that they both do need to start getting better at. But I do think it's worth noting that just as far as how we, judge them, how we sit here and analyze their play, they are very similar players in that they both want to go out and score. They both want to get buckets, and they're both the two, option one, option two for this Rockets team. So on a night where Jalen Green struggled because of the Bucks defense, KPJ struggled for a lot of the same reasons in this game. It doesn't make it okay, and you still want to see them grow and improve from this, and you want to see them come back the next time they play the Bucks and hopefully have some different counters, some different ways to try and attack the Bucks defense to actually get to the spots that they are comfortable on or comfortable in on the floor. But that's why it's a growing opportunity, right? So you take this film, you take these moments for both of the backcourt guys, and you pour over the film. And hopefully the next time that they play the Bucks, they'll be able to realize where some of their mistakes were being made and how they can still attack the Bucks defense and find ways to actually get to the spots on the floor that they want to get to rather than settling for what the Bucks are willing to concede defensively. Coming up, do want to share final thoughts from this game. We'll talk a little bit about Jabari Smith Jr. as well as some of the production from the Rockets bench players. We'll also take a look at some of the stats through 3 games for this Houston Rockets team. We're going to get there after a quick message from our friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting football and for the start of a brand new basketball campaign. Find out the latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth analysis on every single game that you can get your hands on. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. They've got you covered for NFL, they've got you covered for college football, NBA, MLB postseason, all the fighting odds, UFC, MMA, boxing, you name it, they've got you covered over at BetOnline. Right now, you can go take a look at who the odds-on favorites are to be this year's NBA Finals matchup. You got to predict the exact matchup right now. The favorites at the top of the list, Boston Celtics versus Golden State Warriors, a repeat of last year's finals matchup. Then after them, you got Boston Celtics versus LA Clippers at plus 1,700. You got the Bucks versus Warriors at plus 1,750. The Bucks versus the LA Clippers at plus 1,900. And then rounding out the top 5, the sleeper candidate here, you've got the Brooklyn Nets versus Golden State Warriors at plus 2,100. So for all of those odds and more, be sure to check out betonline.net to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. And final segment here at Locked On Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball. Let's go down the line and take a look at some of the other guys from this Houston Rockets game against the Milwaukee Bucks. So we'll go KJ Martin here first, getting the starting nod. He was one of the other 2 that I had penciled in with no Eric Gordon for this game for the Houston Rockets sitting out. His listed reason was right groin tightness, but second night of a back-to-back. EG's not playing back-to-backs this season. There's no way. So it's basically a rest game for Eric Gordon. But they're listing it as right groin tightness. So KJ Martin getting the starting nod in place of Eric Gordon. And a relatively solid game by KJ Martin. 14 points, 6 of 11 shooting, 2 of 5 from the three-point line, 5 boards, 2 assists. Only 1 turnover. Continues to show that when given adequate minutes, KJ Martin can give you some really solid production, especially out of that 3 spot. And that's been the case so far this season. He's basically only playing the 3 for the Houston Rockets. There really hasn't been, I think there's maybe been a couple moments here and there where he's played a little bit of the 4 situationally through these first handful of games, especially against the Grizzlies when they decided to start running Jabari Smith Jr. at the 5. There might have been some moments where KJ was technically the 4 on the floor, but KJ Martin's looked really good. He tends to be the first or included in the first pair of substitutions off the bench for Stephen Silas. Silas opting to bring in KJ and Tari Eason at the same time, usually for Eric Gordon and Jabari Smith Jr. That tends to be the first set of substitutions. KJ's been a pleasant surprise all through preseason, all through this early part of the season. He looks really good. And for a guy who, again, was very much like, I thought, on the chopping block this past summer due to discontent in his role, all of that, he's now one of the guys that I desperately want to see stay in Houston and continue growing with this roster, because it feels like he fits so well with what they're trying to do across the board here in this game. Now, coming off the Rockets bench elsewhere, Tari Eason, I might as well throw him in conjunction with KJ Martin. 11 points, 4 of 9 shooting, only 2 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 3 blocks in this game. I'll tell you what, Tari Eason, even though the rebounding numbers weren't as astronomical as they usually look like for him, he made his presence felt defensively. And for a game where you're dealing with the likes of Giannis, for guys like Jabari, Usman, Tari, basically 3 rookies, because let's face it, Uzi's basically a rookie as well. For those 3 guys to be basically thrown into the deep end against Giannis Antetokounmpo, and hey, he did hang 44 points on their head, so it's a learning experience. It's like a welcome to the NBA moment. They still had some moments where they looked like they were fighting, that they were jockeying with Giannis and trying to hold up to him, whether it was in single coverage or whether it was throwing a quick blitz at him, a double team, whatever. I commend the young Rockets for their fight in trying to deal with the monster that is Giannis Antetokounmpo in this game. It didn't work out very well, but it's also the 3rd game of the NBA season. These young guys are still learning. The defensive coverages are, still adapting. They're still trying to figure out how to even play, acceptable levels of NBA defense against normal teams, let alone the team with the best player in the association. So I like Tari Eason. I like the hustle and the grit that we saw out of him. Kind of nothing new out of him. Well, maybe something new. The 3-point shooting, I will say, out of this one. Drilled 3 threes in this game. I liked a couple of them. There was one that he shot that was just like, it went in, but it was a really bad shot because they were working to try and get Alperen Sengun a quick post up, and Tari just caught the ball on the wing and decided to, heave it up for 3 instead. And it went in. So it's like, yeah, Tari hit 3, but I still thought it was a bad shot. So, there's plenty of those that this Rockets team has where they'll make a shot and you're like, yeah, like Jalen hit that or KPJ hit that. And it's like, cool, bucket went in, but it was still a bad shot within the confines of what the Rockets are trying to achieve offensively. So there's that. Jabari Smith Jr. continues to struggle a little bit as far as getting his flow going offensively. Finished this game 13 points, 5 of 15 shooting, was 3 of 7 from the 3-point line, so you like those numbers. Had 11 rebounds, had an assist, had a couple blocks, was tasked with dealing with Giannis for stretches of the evening, but his shooting inside the arc continues to be a bit concerning, right? 2 of 8 just inside the arc, not great numbers. And again, so much of his game is predicated on having other guys setting him up and making sure he gets the ball in spots where he can shoot, his shot comfortably. And I think the Rockets have done an okay job of that through a couple games. He's getting a healthy number of catch and shoot opportunities. He might not still be leading the league in catch and shoot opportunities, but through 2 games, he was leading the league in catch and shoot opportunities. So, Jabari is getting those opportunities, those moments, but he looks very much like Jalen did last season, right? He's a rookie. He's, trying to get acclimated to the NBA, speed of the game, all of that, and he's going to settle in. I am not worried about his shooting whatsoever. The defensive side of things, though, I do feel like the Rockets are, I don't know if they're just not using him properly or what, but it feels like they, through preseason or through preseason training camp, all that, felt like they were really creative about different ways that they could double and blitz and switch with Jabari and doing all these different cool things with him defensively. And it feels like they got to the regular season, they were just like, all right, we're going to have a very base level of defense and we're just going to play one way defensively. And that's been it so far. So I haven't seen a whole lot of switching. I haven't seen a whole lot of defensive versatility with Jabari being able to utilize his size, guarding the pick and roll, things like that. So that's been a little disappointing, I guess, through 3 games. Maybe it's just because the Rockets aren't quite there yet. They're not quite ready to start adding different layers to their defense. I don't know. I do want to ask about it the next time I get the chance to ask Stephen Silas about his thoughts about how they've performed defensively through these handful of games. But overall, Jabari Smith is going to continue to settle into his role. He's not tasked with being, a primary creator or a secondary creator or even a tertiary creator for this Rockets team. And I still think that the willingness of him to put the ball on the floor and try to create some things, whether it's getting to a mid-range shot or driving the ball into the rim. He had one in this game where he drove it in. He finished with a left-hand lay-in over Giannis, I think it was. And that's a promising, encouraging sign. Seeing him be able to attack off the bounce is not something that he was billed as being able to do right away at the NBA level. So seeing moments like that where he's able to do things that he wasn't supposed to be able to do this quickly are encouraging. The other guy that I want to mention here off the Rockets bench, Jae'Sean Nix, made his return to the Houston Rockets lineup. Just played a small 14 minutes, had 2 points, just 1 of 3 shooting, was 0 of 2 from the 2 3-pointers that he hit. He had one circus shot layup under the rim where he caught the pass and goes up, spun it, tons of English off the ball, and basically it didn't even hit the glass. I think it hit the top of the backboard and dropped into the bucket. But pardon me. And he finished with 1 rebound, 1 assist, just 1 turnover. Not a crazy stat line from Jae'Sean, not a fantastic game by any stretch of the imagination. Largely probably got the nod because no Eric Gordon. It'll be curious to see whether or not that sticks, whether Jae'Sean Nix winds up getting more run possibly than Josh Christopher in these upcoming games once Eric Gordon is back in the Rockets lineup, once Jae'Sean Tate is back. That's the other thing. We still haven't seen a fully healthy Rockets team. They're missing 2 of their top 6 players in Eric Gordon and Jae'Sean Tate, and 2 guys who definitely change the fabric of what this team can achieve on a nightly basis. But I was really encouraged by what I saw out of Jae'Sean because of his ability to actually get the ball to guys on the floor where they want it. There was one specific moment where Alperen Sengun was trying to post up down low, and the ball was on the wing, and whoever was on the wing, it might have been Tari Eason, maybe I'm mistaken there. Whoever had the ball on the wing wasn't passing the entry, wasn't giving the entry pass to Alp. They kicked it back out to the top of the key to Jae'Sean Nix, and then Jae'Sean Nix fired an entry pass from the top of the key down to Alperen Sengun. Didn't move the guy out of the way off the wing, didn't do it, was just I see Alp posting up, I'm going to get him the ball. And that's the one thing that Jae'Sean Nix probably does. I don't want to say he does it better than anybody else on the roster, but he is that traditional point guard, right? He's that guard that understands when and where to get the ball to other guys. And I do think throughout preseason and, throughout this game, there were moments where you're encouraged by the reads that Jae'Sean Nix is making. You're encouraged by his decision-making and deciding, okay, this person needs the ball here. Okay, I'm going to get us into this set. Okay, this person is going to be the one taking the shot on this possession, that kind of stuff. So from that standpoint, I do think Jae'Sean Nix is the only natural point on the Rockets roster. KPJ is I don't want to say significantly better playmaker. KPJ is a better playmaker and probably has better court vision than Jae'Sean Nix, and he's incredibly more talented than Nix, but Nix is more comfortable in that role of being the point guard. So having 10 to 15 minutes a night, 10 to 12 minutes a night, whatever, of Jae'Sean Nix out there, especially maybe in conjunction with Alperen Sengun, when he's out there trying to get to his post-ups, trying to get to his spots on the floor, making sure there's somebody that can feed him, that can recognize when Alp has a mismatch or when Alp has the early positioning on a post-up and trying to get him the basketball quickly before the defense is able to get set and send that second man, send that help defense over, whatever. That could be important for both Jae'Sean Nix to have those reps where he can showcase, hey, I am a point guard, I can do this. And also for Alperen Sengun to get those opportunities where he can, again, score the ball and be effective where he needs to be effective on the floor. So those are the thoughts from Rockets Bucks. It was, again, kind of not a complete dumpster fire of a game, but the Bucks kind of steamrolled the Rockets. And schedule loss, right? Second night of a back-to-back, missing key players for the Rockets. Bucks rolled out Giannis Antetokounmpo, and it was the home opener, so he put on an absolute masterclass performance, and it looked really rough. So next time the Rockets take the court, they play the Utah Jazz in Houston. It's always a fun matchup playing the Utah Jazz. The Jazz have looked really good. At the time of this recording, they are taking it they are currently taking it to the New Orleans Pelicans in overtime at the time of this recording. So a really exciting game there. Could be, this Utah Jazz team is good. And this Rockets team, we chalked it up as the Utah Jazz might be the one team through the first 15 games that the Rockets may actually get some wins against. And we may have to revisit that assumption because, damn, this Jazz team looks like they might actually be for real coming into the season. But with that, Of course, we'll have you covered for the recap after the Jazz game. As always, appreciate you for checking out the show. If you haven't done so yet, please consider subscribing wherever you listen to your podcast. That's Apple, Spotify, Google, the Odyssey app, free and available wherever you listen to your podcast. We're also on YouTube, so go to YouTube, search Locked on Rockets. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. But as always, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. We look forward to having you back right here at Locked on Rockets, your daily podcast home for everything Houston Rockets basketball.